Hey there. We're back from University of Utah, and President Trump is actually nominating some good judges. Plus, did he just defeat the NFL? And is that good for America or just good for President Trump? We'll talk about it. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Well, we do have a big mailbag coming up today, and I've looked at the questions, and some of them are just doozies. Some of them are pretty amazing. So we'll get to all of your questions today in the mailbag. If you were a subscriber, you too could have been part of the mailbag, and your life would have been that much richer. But if you're not, I guess you'll just have to listen to everybody else's problems be solved while you wallow through your own. We'll get to all of that in just a little while. Plus, President Trump is actually winning the battle against the NFL. We're going to talk about what it means for him to win, whether that is the country winning or just Trump winning. What are the costs and the benefits of that happening? Because a lot of people on the right are very excited that it seems like the right is finally winning the culture war. I'm not sure that the right was losing this particular aspect of the culture war already. I just think that it hadn't been brought to sort of the fore. So we'll talk about that. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Birch Gold. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the foreign policy sphere. Every couple of days, Rocket Man seems to be threatening us with nuclear war. There are natural disasters that seem to be striking the United States at an outsized rate. You don't have to be that worried about these things to know that it's probably a good idea to have some food in your house in case things go bad, in case you can't get to the grocery store because there's some sort of emergency, or in case the shelves are cleaned out and the government can't get to you. And that's why you should go over to Birch Gold, and you should make sure that you are also prepped in terms of economics, okay? We talk all the time on this show about how you should be prepared for emergency. Well, when it comes to things like natural disasters or foreign policy problems or business problems, insecurity in the stock market, it is necessary for you to have at least part of your money in a solid asset like gold, like precious metals. Not all your money, but you should diversify, and some of your money should be in precious metals. Right now, if you contact Birch Gold Group, they will give you a free information kit, a comprehensive 16-page kit showing how gold and silver can protect your savings, how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. Again, I do have some of my money in precious metals and Birch Gold. Those are the people that I trust. Get your no-cost, no-obligation kit at birchgold.com/Ben. That's birchgold.com/Ben. Ask all the questions you're going to, and then get all your answers from the Birch Gold people. Again, they can help you move your money from an IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold or silver. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, a bunch of 5-star ratings from their clients. They're the people that know how to do this the best. So ask all your questions, get all your answers, and then when you feel secure, invest in precious metals with Birch Gold. Okay, so President Trump looks like he's beginning to win big on the NFL. What I mean is that a lot of teams are now backing down. And this is why I really think it had less to do with President Trump purposefully picking a smart fight and much more to do with the left's knee-jerk reaction to everything Trump says and them going over the top no matter what Trump says. So to recapitulate what exactly happened here, for those who have been asleep in a cave for the last couple of weeks, President Trump said that Colin Kaepernick was an SOB and that owners should fire players who kneel on the sidelines for the national anthem. Now, if you or I said that, we're private citizens. The President of the United States is the President of the United States. Governmental actors should not be telling private actors how to do their business. It's just bad policy. It is not good for the country. If the shoe were on the other foot and Barack Obama were telling people on the right that they should be fired by their left-leaning employers, we would be justifiably angry. Okay, but what Trump wasn't wrong about is that it's nasty to kneel for the national anthem. It is nasty to kneel for the national anthem in 2017. Okay, we're not talking about in 1961 in the middle of Jim Crow. Even then, the smartest civil rights leaders, people like Martin Luther King, knew that the smart thing to do would be to, and the right thing to do, would be to claim the mantle of the national anthem and the Star-Spangled Banner rather than ripping on it and trying to divide the country along those lines. Today, in 2017, there really is no excuse for kneeling for the national anthem. If you have problems with a specific police department, then protest that police department. If you have a problem with a specific police officer, protest that police officer. But to suggest that America is through and through a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe country that is guilty as a whole for the sins of a few is really it's really quite nasty, and it imputes nasty intent to everybody who's standing for the national anthem, because if they cared enough, they'd kneel too. Okay, so that's where Trump was right. Where Trump was right is when he says that it's nasty to kneel for the national anthem, disrespectful to the flag, disrespectful to people who have fought and died to protect that flag and stand for that national anthem. There he is right. But he did what he does, and he went too far. And I think, is that a strategy? Is that by accident? I would say it's more by accident, because Trump has never seen a moderate comment. Like, Trump and Tact parted ways long ago, if ever they have met. So he says what he says. And the left, because they're really dumb, they decide that instead of reacting by saying, listen, we may agree about the national anthem, but everybody has a right to express themselves the way they want to, and we don't think people should be fired for doing that in the NFL. And then standing up for the national anthem while some people kneel, that would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, what they did is they started to kneel. And they allowed Trump to polarize this debate. So now, instead of this being sort of a messy debate where some people were against kneeling but against Trump, and some people were for Trump but for Trump and against kneeling, instead of that, what you had was instead this weird situation where everyone who was against kneeling was against Trump. Everyone who was for kneeling was against Trump, and everyone who was against kneeling was for Trump. Trump placed himself squarely on the side of the flag and the anthem, and his opposition was politically stupid enough to allow him to create that dichotomy by kneeling with the people who are kneeling. So now it looked like all the people who are on Trump's side like the flag and like the anthem, and all the people who weren't on Trump's side hate the flag and hate the anthem, when half the protest was actually about Trump, not about the anthem at all. Really, really dumb of the left. And now it's beginning to pay dividends for Trump, because Trump stayed on this issue. He realized this was a popular issue. He realized that most Americans don't like people kneeling. He realized that if he could grab the mantle of the flag and the national anthem, then he would end up winning that debate, because people like the flag and the national anthem more than they like the people who are kneeling. And if the last election proved nothing, it should have proved that we are all binary thinkers, or at least a huge number of Americans are binary thinkers. We can't think in three dimensions, and so that means that instead of thinking about two issues at once, censorship of people who kneel and the actual kneeling, we just boil it down to the actual kneeling. And the left was, again, dumb enough to fall for this. So Bryant Gumbel over on HBO, the left thought that they had won this debate, which is an amazing thing. There are a bunch of people on the left saying, oh, Trump made a big boo-boo here. I've been saying since the beginning of this, Trump did not make a big boo-boo. What I think Trump did was not great for the country, because I think there was a broad consensus. 85% of Americans don't like kneeling, and a similar number of people are fine with people not being fired for kneeling. Right? So there's a pretty broad consensus. Trump split that consensus. I don't think it's good to split that consensus, because I agree with both halves of that whole. But the left immediately jumped into bed with the Colin Kaepernick crowd, and here's Bryant Gumbel saying that he thinks that great, the athletes are all energized now. Now, for sure, they're going to win this battle. Really dumb stuff from Bryant Gumbel over on HBO.
Finally tonight, a quick thanks to the current occupant of the White House for energizing the social conscience of the modern American athlete. That occupant's weekend series of racist, churlish, and childish comments drew a variety of stunning rebukes and actions, which suggest jocks may finally be realizing that apathy won't cut it anymore, that in conjunction with their fame, they have important civic roles to play, especially now.
Okay,
Many suddenly seem not just willing, but also eager to follow in the giant footsteps of Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Billie Jean King, Roberto Clemente, Arthur Ashe, and many others who courageously use their athletic platforms to challenge authority in the pursuit of justice.
Okay, we can stop it there for a second. So first of all, I think that it's important to note that a lot of the people who we now hail as, heroes in this area, I'm thinking specifically here of Muhammad Ali, were at the time not seen that way. And there's a bit of a heavy golden gloss that's being put on Muhammad Ali's history. I mean, at the time, he was deeply associated with the radical racist Nation of Islam, under pre-Louis Farrakhan, Elijah Muhammad. And the idea that he was doing some sort of great service to the country, Muhammad Ali, at the time, I really disagree with that pretty strongly. In fact, many Americans disagreed with it, which is why when he had his first fight with Joe Frazier, a lot of Americans were on the side of Joe Frazier. Muhammad Ali helped exacerbate racial divides. Joe Frazier was a guy who grew up poor in Philadelphia. Muhammad Ali grew up middle class in Louisiana as Cassius Clay, and Joe Frazier was somebody who didn't agree with the idea that you were supposed to stand against the American flag, or that you were supposed to protest the American government, or that America was a deeply terrible place. He was a much more unifying figure than Ali. Ali proceeded to call Frazier a gorilla and use really racist terminology with regard to Joe Frazier in order to push basically the Nation of Islam's message. So now he's hailed as some sort of civil rights hero, but at the time he certainly was not, and a lot of the stuff he did was really, really negative. There's actually a great HBO documentary on this called Ghosts of Manila that you should go check out if you haven't seen it. It's also a book. It's really worth reading on this. But beyond that, if Bryant Gumbel thinks that the sports world is going to win by continuing to politicize itself in ways that are really not well thought out or well calibrated, that athletes doing simplistic things like kneeling for the national anthem is somehow great for the country, this is a battle that Bryant Gumbel and those athletes are not going to win. And I'm frankly confused as to why they think they would. Most Americans don't believe that this is a racist country or should be castigated as such. Most Americans also believe that if you can name a specific racist incident, then we'll fight it with you. But he's not the only one. So there's a Tennessee Titans tight end named Delaney Walker, who, according to the Tennessean, said, first off, I'm going to say this. We're not disrespecting the military, the men and women that serve in the Army. That's not what this is about. If you look at most of the guys in here, I've been in the USO. I support the troops. This is not about that. It's about equal rights, and that's all everyone is trying to show is that we all care about each other. And the fans that don't want to come to the game, I mean, okay, bye. Could you possibly be dumber? I mean, why in the world would you want to alienate your fan base? They are paying your salary. What we've seen over the past couple of years is people not watching ESPN, I think in large measure because it has become politicized. People not watching the NFL as much for a couple of reasons. First of all, the worries about concussions. Second of all, domestic violence stuff. And then also, yes, the politicization of the NFL. I used to watch a lot more NFL. I don't like watching the NFL as much anymore because I don't need Bob Costas lecturing me on gun control, and I don't need a bunch of St. Louis Rams players perpetuating the lie that hands up, don't shoot was a real thing in Ferguson, which they did a couple of years ago and were not punished by the NFL. You see this from people in the NBA too. The 76ers, their first round draft pick is a guy named Ben Simmons. He's supposed to be a very good player, and he comes out and he starts ripping Trump by name. I'm going to play that in just a second and suggest that this is not smart strategy, and you will see that Trump is going to win this particular battle, which is a big win for Trump. We'll talk about whether it's a win for the right and a win for the culture, because I think it's not quite as easy as some people want to make it out to be. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. So, someone breaks into your house. Somebody is at the front door, and they shatter the window on your front door. They reach in, they pull the latch. You rush out with your gun. The person is trying to get into your house in the middle of the night. You shoot them. You think that's the end of the story. You did a great job, right? You did something good, self-defense, defense of home and others, defense of self and others, defending your property. The police will come and they may arrest you. And that's why you need to talk to my friends over at the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. Right now, they're happy to give you for free, when you go to defendmyfamilynow.com, the 2017 Concealed Carry and Family Defense Guide. It is from the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. Again, it's 100% free. You will learn how to detect attackers before they see you, how to survive a mass shooting, the safest and most dangerous places to sit in a restaurant, how to responsibly own and store a gun, particularly if you have kids, and a whole lot more. It's 164 pages and comes with a bonus audio version. So after you're done with our podcast today, you can go and listen to that. This life-changing guide is 100% free. For a limited time, you'll also get a bonus home defense checklist. So go to defendmyfamilynow.com. That's defendmyfamilynow.com, and get the resources that you need in order to ensure that you are protected in case you, God forbid, have to use your gun. I mean, the reason to own a gun is that you don't have to use it. If God forbid you have to use it, you need help from my friends at the USCCA. Defendmyfamilynow.com. Okay, so again, polarizing along Trumpian lines usually wouldn't be a problem for athletes. Polarizing along Trumpian lines when Trump is standing with the flag and with the army is really not a good idea for these athletes. So here is Ben Simmons, who is 76ers forward, I believe, talking about how much he hates Trump.
If we were in Australia right now, a lot of people would call him a kid. And that's how I personally feel.
Okay, well, that's convenience. I mean, again, is this elevating the discourse? No. And listen, I don't think anyone has an obligation to elevate the discourse. But again, if you're going to polarize the audience, this is probably the best way to do it. So here's the problem. Now the left has staked out a position. The position they staked out last Sunday was, it's good to kneel, or it's good to boycott the anthem, or as a slap against Trump, we're going to do all of these things. And then the fans say, wait, whatever you think about Trump, what are you doing with the anthem? What are you doing with the flag? Like, these are the only unifying symbols we have left. We disagree about everything. We disagree about politics. We disagree about culture. We disagree about the usefulness of the pause pod. We disagree about all these things. But what we don't disagree about is that the flag is a good thing and the national anthem is a good thing. So what are you doing? And so now the NFL has basically been forced to back down. The way that they're backing down is that they are standing and linking arms for the national anthem. This is their sort of subtle way of backing down. I said that on Sunday what they should have done if they wanted to show solidarity is the people who are going to kneel should have been the exact same people kneeling 6 months ago, and everybody else on the field should have stood next to the people who are kneeling. You're showing solidarity by being next to the person, right? What's the big deal? Like, why elevate the issue? What's the point of elevating the issue? In any case, these players last night, this is the Bears-Packers game, they were standing and linking arms for the national anthem, and this is it basically is a back down, right? It's a back down. People aren't kneeling anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, to honor America, please stand, remove your hats, and join country recording artist Tyler Farr as he sings our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see?
So last week, the entire Packers team basically
by the
knelt.
dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight.
Right, and no problem. Everybody's standing, not a problem. But it looks like a back down because once you stake out a position in politics, if you back off the position, it looks like the other guy won. And it's not just the Packers and the Bears. This is basically the new policy. There's a guy named Marquise Pouncey. Is he a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers? He's a center. He's the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers and one of the longest tenured players on their roster. He came out yesterday and he said, "I promise you, this week we are all going to stand for the anthem."
I promise you one thing, this week we'll all be standing out there for the national anthem. Trust me, we respect our flag and respect the military and everything that goes a part of it, man. I think the bigger message is that people was just trying to stay out of it, and that we should have, just unite inside. And everyone was in there, standing up, and it was all about the flag, and, it was a big misunderstanding. Trust me, I'm very sorry that anyone that probably feels the way that they do, and, rightfully so, but, there's a lot of arguments in them points, but I care about the flag dearly, and trust me, this team will be out there standing.
Right, basically they're saying it was a big mistake. So that looks like a win for Trump. The Denver Broncos put out this message on their social media yesterday. They put out this long message. It says, "Last week, members of our team joined their brothers around the NFL in a powerful display of unity. It was an emotional time for everyone, including the fans who support us each and every week. As controversial as it appeared, we needed to show our collective strength and resolve. Our voices needed to be heard loud and clear. Make no mistakes, our actions were in no way a protest of the military, the flag, or those who keep us safe." Which is why, if you thought that, then you shouldn't have picked that example. Like, guys, image matters. You're in an image-driven business, for goodness sake. Okay, it's not like you sell shoes for a living, right? You're actually in a business where you are on TV all the time. Anyone in the TV industry knows that what's on the TV is the image that people are consuming. They say, "We have nothing but the deepest love and respect for those who protect our way of life and the freedoms we enjoy as Americans. While there's no greater country, it's not perfect. Inequalities still exist, and we all have work to do in all forms of social justice," which is their sort of sop to Black Lives Matter. And then they say, "We can all do better. It starts with us." And then they say, "We are a team and we stand together. No matter how divisive some comments and issues can be, nothing should ever get in the way of that." Okay, well, as a country, we're supposed to stand together. Not just a team. As a country, we're supposed to stand together, which is why people care about this issue in the first place. But again, it now looks like all these players who knelt last week will not be kneeling this week. What prompted the change? People are going to say Trump did. Right? So big win for Trump. Big win for Trump. The NBA's Adam Silver, he came out, he said he now expects the players to stand.
As Coach Popovich said the other day, people need to engage and have these discussions, and they're not always easy discussions to have. Sometimes they are painful discussions, but they need to be had. And I'm hoping, once again, that this league can play a constructive role there on, the anthem. And specifically, we have a rule that requires our players to stand for the anthem. It's been our rule as long as I've been involved with the league. And my expectation is that our players will continue to stand for the anthem.
Okay, so nothing actually changed in the NBA, and this is the important thing to note. It looks like the NBA is backing down because some of the players were really loud about this stuff, but nothing actually changed. I mean, in 1996, there was a guy named Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. He was a guard for, I believe it was at the time, was he on the Golden State Warriors? Or the Denver Nuggets. He's on the Denver Nuggets at the time. And he refused to stand for the national anthem. Instead, he decided that he viewed the American flag as a symbol of oppression and racism, and he said that standing for the anthem would conflict with his Muslim faith. He said, "You can't be forgotten for oppression. It's clear in the Quran. Islam is the only way. I don't criticize those who stand, so don't criticize me for sitting." So the NBA suspended him for a game, and they cited a rule that the players had to line up in a dignified posture. It cost him about $32,000. The players' union supported him, and he reached a compromise with the league that allowed him to stand and pray with his head down during the anthem. And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. His career basically tanked after that because he lost his entire fan base. But that was basically the end of that. So the idea that this battle started just last week is not really true, or the idea the NBA switched its position on this is not really true. But the impression left in the minds of the public is that all these people were going to kneel. Trump stepped in. They're no longer kneeling. Good for Trump. So big political victory for Trump. Now, is it a big political victory for the right? Well, on the one hand, a victory for Trump against people who are kneeling is sort of a victory for the right, except that more Americans thought that Colin Kaepernick was doing a dumb thing before Trump intervened than after he intervened. If you look at the polls, again, there was like 85% of Americans thought that Colin Kaepernick was doing the wrong thing. Now it's about 60% of Americans, 65% of Americans. That's not actually a victory for the right. Right? It's actually a loss for the right. If I would have told you that, let's say that Trump weren't president. Let's say that Hillary had, God forbid, been elected president. And let's say that Hillary had made comments talking about how wonderful it was to kneel for the anthem. And the number of Americans who thought it was bad to kneel for the anthem dropped from 85% to 60%, would have said that's a terrible thing 25% more Americans now are okay with kneeling for the anthem. That's a really bad thing. Well, 25% of Americans are now okay with kneeling for the anthem. That's not a great thing, even though Trump wins a political victory by looking like a strong guy. And it's not really great for the country. And this was my objection in the first place. Again, a lot of people on the right saying, oh, we're winning the culture war. We're winning the culture war. So in the one sense, I think the right is winning the culture war by demonstrating that the left is willing to be this radical. That is a win for the right. Okay, that's a win for the right. If the left is willing to side with Colin Kaepernick just to oppose Trump, it demonstrates how radical they are. If the left is willing to kneel for the anthem to buck against Trump, that demonstrates the radicalism of the left. But for America's unity, for the cause of standing for the anthem, it actually was not a huge win. So it's a little bit more complex than just saying Trump wins, everybody else loses, we're done here. I don't think it's quite that simple. Now, I want to talk about what else this means in terms of the Republican agenda stalling, because while Trump is fighting these culture war battles that really get the base jazzed up and get people excited, because the truth is, as I've said before, people are much more interested in talking about cultural issues than in tax cuts. Are the Republicans even going to be able to do anything? And what is the divide inside the Republican Party? What does it even mean? It's confusing, because you hear the term establishment, and then you see people who are clearly not establishment being called establishment, and people who are working with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer being called anti-establishment. What do these terms even mean anymore? Rush Limbaugh was on with Sean Hannity last night, two guys who I've been very friendly with and people I grew up listening to, and they were talking about Trump versus sort of the Republican Congress. And we'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at DaVinci. So yesterday I was in Utah, and we didn't have a place to broadcast. So we used DaVinci to book a boardroom in this really nice building, beautiful boardroom, and we filmed from the boardroom there for a very, very low cost. That is what DaVinci does. In today's digital business world, you may not have offices. You may not want to pay rent, like we do at this building for offices. You may have an online business, and you have a meeting now, or you have to Skype call somebody, and you don't want to look like you're doing it from your closet. So instead, what you do is you go over to DaVinci and you book a DaVinci meeting room. They provide you instant access to over 5,000 incredibly affordable meeting rooms in well-known office locations in every city, and they make it really easy. You search, you book, you meet. And what's amazing is that not only that, the DaVinci meeting room comes fully staffed. So we got there, and there was actually an assistant who was ready to usher us into the room, bring us coffee. It's like you have your own office. It's really amazing. And equipped with all the latest tech plus high-speed internet. Whether you need a day office or a conference room, a boardroom or a training space, DaVinci has what you need to make your next business meeting a success. And those DaVinci meeting rooms start at just $10 an hour. So everyone, listen, we have offices, but when we're on the road, we use DaVinci. I'm going to go to Sacramento next week. I'm going to use DaVinci, right? This is the way that we operate here at the business, and that's how you should operate whether you have offices or not. If you don't have offices, it's even better, because then no matter where you are, you're in your home city, and you need an office for the day. Just use DaVinci. So right now, go to DaVinciMeeting.com/Ben, and the first hour is on them, so the first hour is free. DaVinciMeeting.com/Ben. Your first hour, again, is free. Terms and conditions do apply. For details, go to DaVinciMeeting.com/Ben. And you will see the place you hold your next meeting is going to be a lot better than where you're holding it right now. DaVinciMeeting.com/Ben. Really, it's a great service. And yesterday's service was really tremendous. I mean, it was like being at home when we were on the road. Really amazing. Okay, so while Trump is engaged in these culture wars, which is the stuff that animates elections, let's be frank about this. What Republicans do on tax cuts is going to be much less significant for the 2020 election than this NFL stuff. Sorry, that's just the way it works. That's why Donald Trump can go from a guy who was commenting on Twitter about birtherism 4 years ago to the president of the United States. Culture wars matter a lot more than the political battles. But what does that mean for the political battle? In some ways, it means that it's harder to get people on the same page, because all you have to do is virtue signal in the culture wars, and then we don't actually have to pass anything. So there are some pretty significant and fundamental differences inside the Republican Party, and it's always interesting to watch people like Sean and Rush, both of whom have been strongly supportive of President Trump, talk about what the Republican Congress is doing to buck Trump. Instead of suggesting that everyone has a duty to get on the same page, the idea is that if the Republicans would just follow Trump, he would lead them to the promised land. I don't think that this is exactly correct.
I don't see them embracing strong ideas and going and selling them, which I think they'd win on the...
I don't think they're conservative. I don't think they ever have been. They don't want Trump to succeed with his agenda. They can't afford that. I'm not exaggerating here. They can't afford for him to succeed with his agenda. They can't afford it. The lid's blown. The gig is over. The joke is revealed. If an outsider with no prior political experience can come in and fix messes that people have been promised would be fixed for 30 years, how does that make them look? They can't allow that to happen.
Okay, so Rush is actually making a slightly different point. He's not making the point about conservatism. He's making a point that there are all these career politicians who haven't been doing anything. If Trump comes in and fixes things, he makes them look bad. I don't think that that's actually what's going on here. I don't think that there are a lot of career politicians who are sitting around going, you know what, if I thwart Trump, I look better today. How many Republicans feel like if they thwart Trump on things they want passed, that is actually going to make them look better in the eyes of their own constituents? Their constituents voted for Trump. Their constituents voted for Trump. If they look like they're actively thwarting Trump, they get ousted. I mean, hell, if they look like they even signaled in not liking Trump, they get ousted, right? Mo Brooks, people forget about Mo Brooks in Alabama. Mo Brooks was much more conservative than either Luther Strange or Roy Moore on policy. And Mo Brooks, who's a real Tea Party guy, came in third in the Republican primary because he wasn't supportive enough of Trump. So this idea that all these guys are trying to buck Trump to demonstrate that politics is a hard business, I don't think that's right. The problem with the argument that's being made here is that Trump's agenda is actually not the conservative agenda. This has always been the problem. This was the problem before the election. Let's say that Republicans went along with all of Trump's agenda and they just started voting for it. They'd be voting for higher taxes on people who are actually paying the taxes. They'd be voting for bigger spending. They would be voting for presumably a giant infrastructure bill. They would be voting for immigration policy that their own constituents in many cases don't support. They would be voting for President Trump's program with regard to foreign policy has been all over the place. Like, Trump doesn't have a well-defined program where you can even say follow the leader. Rush says that, Rush admits that Trump's tax policy is pure populism, and then he says that Republicans won't pass it because it's pure populism. Maybe that's not a terrible thing. I mean, if the tax policy is populism, I wasn't aware that these guys were elected on a populist message. They were elected on a different message.
What it really is how to get votes from the middle class. This is a pure populist approach. This is not a conservative approach to tax reform whatsoever. On this one, President Trump is who he is. He is a full-fledged nationalist populist, and this tax policy indicates that.
Okay, so again,
so
what Rush says here sort of, I think, disagrees with what he was saying in the first clip. In the first clip, he's saying, these guys in Congress, they aren't conservative. If they were conservative, they just go along with Trump. But then he's admitting that Trump's tax policy is pure populism. You can't really have it both ways. Okay, Trump's tax policy here, when he's saying he wants to raise the taxes on the people who are paying the majority of the taxes in the country, that is not a conservative thing to do. So what, and all of the hubbub around Trump and Trumpism and this idea of nationalist populism, Trump isn't a nationalist populist. Trump is just a guy with a bunch of views. This idea of putting like a philosophical patina on Trump's collection of viewpoints is wrong. Like, sometimes he does stuff that's super conservative. I have to stop here and praise Trump. Yesterday, he nominated Justice Don Willett of the Texas Supreme Court to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Great. That's terrific. He also nominated a judge whose last name, he's an Asian judge named, I think his last name is Ho, and he was nominated also. He's also quite conservative. Trump's judicial nominees have been across the board very conservative. That's been fantastic. But Trump isn't a conservative, right? So the point that I'm making here is not that he doesn't get credit for that. He absolutely does. That's a wonderful thing, and he should continue nominating terrific justices to fill these slots. But the suggestion that Trump is across the board a consistent guy, or he has any sort of through line to what he believes, is just not true. Ann Coulter, I think, is sort of making the same mistake here. Again, I've known Ann since I was 16 years old. Here's Ann talking about Roy Moore, the guy who just won the Alabama Senate primary. It's very controversial because not only did he bring in a Ten Commandments monument and put it on the lawn at the Alabama at the state courthouse, I guess. He refused to remove it when he was ordered to remove it, and he was ousted from his job there. Then he got his job back. Then he refused to enforce same-sex rules promulgated by the Supreme Court of the United States, and then he was ousted again. He's made some pretty ridiculous comments about people like Keith Ellison not being able to be seated in Congress because Keith Ellison is Muslim. That's absurd. I really dislike Keith Ellison. I think Keith Ellison's an awful person, but I don't think that Muslims should not be allowed to sit in Congress. I think that's silly. But in any case, here's Ann Coulter on Roy Moore talking about what happened in Alabama. Because remember, Roy Moore was the guy who was not endorsed by Trump. Luther Strange was the guy endorsed by Trump, but Roy Moore beat Luther Strange pretty handily. Here's Coulter.
How you doing?
Fantastic. How are you, Mark Simone?
Oh, you sound happy today. Does this have
Yes, because your candidate lost and Trumpism prevailed.
My candidate? I didn't have a candidate.
Trump. Your president.
I don't know anything about Alabama Senate candidates. They look like two Andy Griffiths.
You know about Trump, and Trump has not been following Trumpism. We now see there are two different things. Trumpism 1, Trump 0.
Okay, so this is the message that people are trying to do now. So now that it's clear that Trump does not actually have an ideology, people are trying to actually construct one and then separate it from Trump. But we'll call it Trumpism, which is incoherent. What really unifies the party? You want to know why the Republican Party is having difficulty governing? The reason they're having difficulty governing is because the only unifying thread between Trump and the Trumpists, the people who like Trumpism or whatever they're calling that these days, the nationalist populists, and the people who are traditional conservatives and the libertarians, the only thing that unites them is opposition to the left. That's not a great thing. Okay, listen, we're not big on the left here, right? I mean, we give you a mug, right, that says leftist here is hot or cold. Like we're not huge on the left, but you actually have to push a certain ideology if you hope to unify and actually be able to govern. The fact that Republicans are not really speaks to the idea that opposition is a lot easier than governing. And this is where I keep saying this over and over, Mr. President, you campaigned as a leader. You campaigned as the guy who was going to lead Republicans to the promised land, the guy who was going to get things done. Forget about the first part. Let's just talk about getting things done. If you want to get things done, you need to buckle down and you need to force through your agenda by taking it directly to the public and by wheeling and dealing, which you say you're great at. You need to do all of these things because otherwise it's just going to be the Republicans unable to push an agenda and you sitting on the sidelines sniping at them. That's not a recipe for legislative success in any way, shape, or form. Well, we're going to get to things I like, things I hate in the mailbag. But first, you're going to have to subscribe if you want to see that live. So you can always listen later on audio. But if you want to subscribe and see the rest of the show live and be part of the mailbag, get your questions in, then go over to dailywire.com, $9.99 a month. We'll get you a subscription to the Daily Wire. You get my show, you get Andrew Klavan's show, you get Michael Knowles' show, you get all of those shows fully live. You can download them later ad-free when you are a subscriber. You can also get our website without banner ads. You get all those things when you subscribe. If you become an annual subscriber, you get this, the aforementioned greatest vessel for holding tears in the known universe, the Leftist Tears Hot or Cold tumbler. And you can use that to your heart's content for $99 a year. If you just want to listen to the show for free later, go over to iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube, subscribe, leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We are the largest, fastest growing podcast in the nation.